We've talked a little bit now about mold and damp on the boat. If you've had a chance to see that video, then this will be a nice segue from there. The other component of managing damp on the boat is actually on the outside of the boat. In our climate, we get lots of snow, we get lots of snow load on the decks, and we also get our cockpits filling up with snow and water. If your cockpit drains are working, then fantastic, but often that will all freeze in the cockpit, and now you've got a big giant ice block in your cockpit or on deck. These are all undesirable things. Ice and snow load cause damage, and to avoid that and also avoid any leaking inside the boat during the winter, you'll consider having your boat covered. Covering your boat can come in two forms. One, shrink wrapping it. That's where you get a company to come and do it. Some people are able to do it themselves as well. It does require a little bit of equipment to do though. The other method is, your sort of standard canvas or plastic tarp that you're going to put on the boat. Shrink wrapping, just to touch on that for a minute. One of the benefits to shrink wrapping is you can get a really nice little door to go onto your shrink wrapping job. Your installer will do that for you. And then you've got really nice access into your boat to do any of those little winter projects that you were hoping for. Shrink wrapping is also a really good conversation of shrink wrap tape. The tape, you will find, is the most amazing stuff to have on board. Lots of people are big fans of duct tape. I'm not a fan of duct tape because it leaves a lot of sticky residue behind, and the UVs break down the outer skin of it. Shrink wrap tape is really handy to have around your boat. It won't stick to a particularly wet surface, it's its only downfall. But if it's even remotely dry, then it will stick to just about anything. Shrink wrap tape is going to help you in your maintenance of your shrink wrap. In case you get a little hole in it, sometimes little fancy squirrels and birds will land on the shrink wrap and they'll actually try to wiggle their way through. So having a little bit of tape that you can just throw over a mending spot is a great way to go. Shrink wrap, often the concern that people have about shrink wrap is the amount of ventilation that can happen throughout the plastic enclosure. Your shrink wrapper will install little vents, and they're just pockets around the shrink wrap, and it's a spot for the air to escape when it warms up. But additionally to that, the problem with shrink wrap would be if you have a painted deck or a painted hull. If it's all grip or all the different kinds of paint that are out there, but a painted hull versus a gel hull, paint doesn't like being heated up, and it doesn't like the potential for little pockets of moisture to sit against it. So if you have a painted deck or if you have a painted hull and you're considering shrink wrapping, you need to have that conversation with your shrink wrapper. They often have lots of techniques for managing and not damaging it, but they need to know before they show up that it's a painted surface, and then they'll accommodate you accordingly. The other option then is a tarp. Not a big fan of tarps or canvas tarps. Lots of people love them though, and that may be your choice. There are lots of custom tarps you can have, or better said, lots of tarps that can be custom made for your boat so that they fit quite nicely, and they may even have a doorway in them as well. The difference though between shrink wrap and custom tarps, the custom tarp, you have to install it every season and then take it home and store it in the spring. Shrink wrap is installed by the installer, not you, and then in the spring you need to take it apart and recycle it. All the products now can be recycled, which is really nice, where not always in the past they've been able to be recycled. So as long as your yard gets a bin in just for shrink wrapping recycling, the wood and the products can be recycled. So you get to pick your battles in life, but definitely figure out the way that you're going to cover your boat to protect it from snow load and ice accumulation on deck.